Fala pessoal, beleza? Aqui é da equipe do canal Gringo Cortes, trazendo para vocês o melhor dos podcasts internacionais com legendas incríveis. Se você curtiu nosso trabalho, lembra de deixar o like, se inscrever e comentar aqui embaixo o que vocês acharam desse corte. Bora pro vídeo!
Being, in the jiu-jitsu community, like I'm around, as you are all, like incredibly tough people, like physically tough people, mentally tough people. But, I've seen some of those people taken down by a 120-pound woman, not from a grappling perspective, but they are taken apart by a woman in their life, and vice versa. I've seen men, who like it really is shocking how much leverage we give to our romantic partners and how little genuine discussion we really have about it, how much we really are ever trained to think about it. There's nothing in school that teaches us about it. So much of literature and art is an idealized version of it. So little of it is real.
And no matter how it evolves, even when it ends in tragedy or drama, I feel like what people don't do enough is appreciate the good times. Like, appreciate how beautiful it is to having taken the risk and to having experienced that kind of love. I mean, when you look at people that are divorcing each other, there's a Edgar Allan Poe quote, "The years of love have been forgot in the hatred of a minute." I always kind of am saddened, like deeply saddened, how people seem to forget how many beautiful moments have been shared when some reason, some drama, some breakup leads them to part ways.
Yeah. It's interesting that you came to that not being a divorce lawyer, because I've felt that way for a long time. And I really try to say to my clients, like in the courtroom at the negotiating table, I have a role to play where I have to be sort of like a pit bull or some kind of a courtroom sociopath. But behind closed doors, like I'm very candid with people. I'm trying to be much more emotionally attuned with them.
So you're an empath in the sheets and sociopath in the streets?
Exactly correct. Okay. That's well said. I get a new tattoo idea. That's good. I like that. But I do believe when I'm behind closed doors with people, I say to them, how you end things is going to be how you're going to remember the whole thing. And that's unfortunate because, you watch like a 2-hour movie, and if the last 15 minutes of it sucked, you go, well, that movie sucked. Like, well, the first hour and 45 was great, but you walk out with this bad taste in your mouth. I'm genuinely in awe of how easily people forget that they loved each other. And I'm amazed because by the time I meet them and by the time they hire me to be a weapon against the person they were in love with, there's nothing but animosity there. And so I have to try to imagine what these two people looked like when they were in love with each other and how that even existed. But I have to tell you, like, I don't function that way. Like every woman I ever had a relationship with, like when I think of them, I don't think of the ending necessarily. I try to think about the greatest hits. I try to think about the moments that were wonderful, where I loved them and they loved me, and like there was joy and there was connection. And I don't know why you'd choose not to. There's that old axiom, I don't know who said it, that if you don't learn to find joy in the snow, you'll have less joy in your life and precisely the same amount of snow. And I genuinely believe, like, okay, the relationship ends. This is where it ends. We're done now. I am making a choice as to how I will remember you. And we do it in relationships. Like I always tell people, if you ever want to see a couple light up, if they're ever like the couple at the table that's, it seems like they got in a fight or something, ask them how they met. And most people, when they talk about how they met, like their face softens. They both, and the other person looking at them telling the story gets that look you were talking about before. Yeah. And because they remember that thing and how they felt at that moment. And when this person was a choice, not a default, not their automatic +1, but the person they asked to the wedding. Not the, of course you're bringing her, it's your wife. You bring your fucking wife places. Like it was still, hey, there's like, 3.5 billion women and I'm picking you. you know, like that feeling. And I don't know why when a relationship ends, you can't do that. A lesson I learned when my mother passed away she had a 2-year terrible battle with cancer and was on hospice and was very, very sick. And it was a very slow and awful end. And I remember one of my worst fears was that this is how I would remember my mother for the rest of my life. That I would never be able to think of her, that I didn't think of what she had become in the last months, where she was withered away to nothing in this bed, you know? And I learned over time that memory is very kind, that like that faded somehow. And that now, like when I remember her healthy and vibrant. I remember her laughter. I remember positive things. Some of that is I like to look at photos of that, but some of it is just how I think memory works. And I don't know why we don't apply that to relationships. And I think part of it is because we have this binary view of relationships, that it's either success, which means you live happily ever after for the rest of your lives and die together, or like in short succession, or it was wrong, it was awful. And I don't understand why that would have to be how we do it. I think we could look at relationships like what they are, which is chapters in a book. And that book is our life. And those chapters all have significance. And none of them the later chapters, none of them would happen without the prior ones. Mm-hmm. So there's this beauty to me of that. And I don't know if it's a choice or if that is how it is. And the rest is just narrative that we've put on top of it culturally for some reason.
Well, I think to push back a little bit, I think memory can also, I think it is a deliberate choice, because I think memory can basically, that's how trauma works. It can surface the negative stuff, and the negative stuff completely drowns out all the positive. So I think it's a deliberate choice to make your memory probably work that way. You know, in relationships, betrayal can do that, right? Sort of cheating, infidelity, like one event can almost erase the entirety of your understanding of the past, and all the memories are sort of shrouded in this darkness of, okay, what I believed was true is totally untrue, and sort of to overcome that and still appreciate the beautiful moments.
I'm continually astounded by how long the hurt and anger of betrayal can reverberate. I have clients who were 4 years, 5 years past when the divorce ended, the cheating was discovered, and they're as angry as they were the day they found out. And I don't know what that's about. Because I also have clients that they like look back on it and they go, you know, we screwed up. Like we were, you know, we didn't do the best, but we did the best we could do at the time. And, you know, there should be stars for wars like ours, you know, like there should be champagne for the survivors.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Like we made it through, you know, like we survived it, and we were fools, and we were fools for love. And there are worse things in the world to be fools for. But I also do think that most relationships where there was infidelity, and it's not a popular thing to say, and I'll get pilloried for it, but
great.
You know, I just don't know, and I don't want to blame the victim of infidelity, but was the relationship really where it needed to be? Like, were you truly the most just dutiful spouse who was seeing this person's needs be met? Again, we've established in the granola story that people can sometimes, with good intentions, not be meeting their partner's needs, or perceiving their partner's needs, or their partner isn't communicating them the right way, or all of the above. But I've rarely seen very happy, content couples that cheat on each other. Mm-hmm. And so I understand there's a shame in saying this person cheated on me, or I cheated on this person. Because I represent the cheater and I represent the cheated. I represent the victim of domestic violence, and I represent the perpetrator of domestic violence. I represent the person with the substance use disorder, the person married to the person. So I don't get to choose the white or the black hat. Like, I have my client, and that's my client. And it forces me to put myself into their story from their point of view. And I think that kind of radical empathy that you need to engage in on a daily basis to represent people in those kinds of proceedings, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like there's good guys and bad guys, you know? It just seems like it's complicated and people's intentions and where they actually end up are different.
Yeah, I think there's some sense in still remembering the betrayal as it being a symptom of taking life a little too seriously where you don't, life shouldn't be taken that seriously. You should be able to laugh at it all. I like the story you say of, be able to appreciate the battle, that should give stars for those kind of wars that we fought and just kind of be able to laugh at it all.
Especially with love. Like, love's just so absurd.
Yeah.
Like, it's
just crazy.
It's so crazy. I mean, like, I think it's funny. I mean, this is real candor, but, as a man, like, there's nothing funnier than when you finish masturbating, There's no more humbling moment. And I like to think about the fact that, like, the richest, famous, most powerful person in the world, they jerk off. The most powerful man in the world jerks off, I'm sure. All of them do. I mean, you probably know them, so you could ask. But and that moment where you come and you go, what am I doing? Like, now I got to wipe that. Like, oh, good Lord. And there's this feeling of, but a second ago, this seemed like a great idea. And it was, by the way, it was a great idea. But there's this moment, this satori, where you just go, oh, like, what? This is so silly. Well, like, that's love. That's sex. Like, it's great. Like, when you read other people's infidelity, the text messages, the emails, because I have to do that all the time. And I'll tell you how we make the sausage. In a divorce lawyer's office, some of the most entertaining moments is dramatic readings aloud of people's infidelity exchanges with their lovers.
The sexts.
Yeah, the sexts and the like, like, it's just so ridiculous because people have to go through, like, all kinds of gymnastics to be able to meet and have sex in weird places. Yeah. And, and you're reading this and you're reading these texts and you kind of go like, oh my God, these people. And by the way, like, I've represented some very powerful people. Mm-hmm. And you read their texts with their lover or even their spouse, and they're just pathetic. I mean, they're just, like, so not powerful. They're so like, hey, babe, I have a will remain totally nameless. I have a very powerful, wealthy, famous former client where there's a whole series of texts about, is my dick weird? Which, by the way, I think the answer is if you have to ask if you have a weird dick, the answer is probably yes. Because I've owned one and I've never thought, is this weird? But I the fact that you're having this discussion, like, it's absurd. It's hilarious. Like, love is hilarious. It's bizarre. It's such a weird vulnerability. It's such a basic, visceral human need. It really is something that we just, it's mysterious. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. I don't think that even betrayal, like I said, it doesn't have to be that complicated. I think we can frame it differently.
Yeah, you can laugh at the whole thing. I mean, I think what we don't often do with ourselves is look back at text or look back at emails or look back at Google search. I did that recently. Just looking at what I searched for like 10 years ago, 15. It's like, forget last week. Just look at your Google searches last week and you're like, wait a minute. What? Right. Why did you just search for this
right
50 times?
Right.
Like,
why did the Karate Kid 3 pop into my head?
Why? And like, you're like,
where's Ralph Macchio now?
Who is he dating? Why is, and then mother, and then you're like,
and then a restaurant nearby. Yeah, exactly. Like, how did I go from this to that? But it made sense at the time. Yeah. So when you ask someone, how did our relationship fall apart? It's like looking at the Google search history of yourself from 10 years. You don't even know why you were thinking about those things. Yeah. And now you want to understand why you did what you did, felt what you felt, she felt what she felt, she did what she did, and why the two of you, how you impacted each other and interacted with each other. Really? You think that's doable?
But you've in the courtroom, does that come up like text messages
Oh, yeah.
with that resulted in with whoever you're cheating with? So you have
Yeah,
to,
I mean, cheating doesn't come up as much because most states are no-fault states now. So why someone's getting divorced, whether it's infidelity or, it doesn't matter. There's no good spouse bonus or bad spouse penalty.
oh, there isn't. I mean, can you elaborate on that? Like that's
Well, we've had times where we have to prove infidelity because we want to prove what's called wasteful dissipation of marital assets, which means that you were spending money that was marital money on a paramour. That's what the legal name for for a boyfriend or girlfriend in the marriage. And usually the person calls it, that whore or that piece of shit.
Yeah.
But we call them
It rhymes.
paramour.
It rhymes,
the
yeah.
paramour.
Yeah.
And the sometimes we have to prove inclination and opportunity. We have to prove that this person had the inclination to cheat and that they had the opportunity to cheat. And then we want to show that, okay, so when they went away, that should be considered dissipation of marital assets. So if you go out to dinner with your brother, you didn't dissipate the marital estate. But if you bought your paramour a Tiffany bracelet, that would be a dissipation of marital assets, and the person's entitled to a credit back for that from what was taken out of the marital estate. So we do sometimes have to authenticate text messages on the witness stand or in depositions, And what's interesting about that is the way people approach it. Like people sometimes try to pretend, oh no, this is just my good friend, and which is just like you kill your credibility, if you, oh no, she's just my very good friend. She's not. That makes no sense whatsoever. Or no, we were just friends at that point. And then several months later is when once this marriage was over, that's when we got together as partners.
Right.
That's ridiculous. But sometimes people just own it. Just own it. Like I did a deposition of an executive once and, opposing counsel thought they were going to really hit him. They were like, and looking at this credit card receipt, what was this charge for this hotel? He was like, oh, that was for a hotel room that I got with my girlfriend. And you were married? Yes. Where did you stay at the hotel? We didn't even stay. We actually just did like an afternoon delight, rolled around in bed for the day.
yeah.
And it was like, well, now,
What's
took all the thunder out of that.
What's the downside of doing that? It seems like a really...
There wasn't. It actually, I think, helped his credibility. He was my client, so I thought it was the right move. We hadn't really discussed it in advance, but he was naturally intelligent enough to go, yeah, my credibility, I'm not going to lie under oath. I'll admit what it was, but I'll do it in such an, we did it at the end, like Eminem at the end of 8 Mile. It was very yeah, I cheated on her with this person. Now tell these people something they don't know about me, And that's kind of how I try to, as a trial lawyer, we actually, in my firm, refer to it as the 8 Mile strategy, which is we will, if I know there was a text message sent, you piece of shit, I hope you die. My client sent that text message to his co-parent. I on my examination of my client, I will say, I'd like to have this marked for identification, shown to the witness. What is that? Yes. It's a text message. Who's it to? Plaintiff. You sent it? Yeah. Read it out loud for the court. Do I have to? I think you should. You're a piece of S. Does it say S? No. What does it say? Yeah. Well, it's a profanity. So you say it. You piece of shit. I hope that you die.
Yeah.
You sent that to her. Yes. Why? I was really mad. Do you think that was good? No. Do you think it was helpful for your co-parenting relationship with her? No. Why did you send it then? She sent me 50 texts exactly like that. And I never responded. And I pushed it down every time. And then finally, I just blew up at her. If you had it to do over again, would you do it differently? I wish I could say I would. But the truth is, I'm human and I was at my limits. And I'm watching opposing counsel cross out entire sheets of their cross-examination because it's gone now. They thought that they had their Perry Mason moment. They had their did you order the code red moment? And it's gone now. Because if you just own and accept your fault or your issues in the relationship, you can take a lot of the power out of that.
And I wish we wouldn't take text seriously.
I don't think we should have substantive discussions via text. I think text was designed for, are you here? Yes. 15 minutes away. Or I got here safely, love you. That. Substantive discussions. People love having arguments via text. Yeah. And I have to say, when you read other people's text messages, as I am often forced to do, it is amazing Because just like that Google history you were talking about, I don't know how the hell you got from one thing to another. Like I was just reading on the way here in the car, I was reading through a text exchange between two co-parents in the middle of a custody thing that I'm involved in. And it's like, you piece of shit, you never cared about anything, and I'm going to take, you have no right to take the kids from me. And then the next day, nothing in between. The next day, Maddie got a good grade on her science thing. Oh, that's great. She's doing so well. It makes me so happy. Yeah, her teacher said she's doing really well. Yeah, that's really great to see. I'll be there about 15 minutes late. No problem. See you then. Wait, like it was a day ago. Was there I want to know, was there a phone conversation in between where one of you went, hey man, listen, I'm really sorry about that. Oh no, look, we were both pissed, whatever. Or is it just like you did that and then we're supposed to pretend that didn't happen and now we're just going to talk about what Maddie got on her test?
Yeah. Well, sometimes a good nap or a good night's sleep can solve a lot of emotional issues.
I totally get it. But is there some, if you're looking just at the texts, like it begs the question, wouldn't you take the nap and then go, hey, listen, I just woke up from the nap. It turns out I was really tired. Like, does that not happen by text?
Oh no, that's because sometimes it's hard to probably apologize for being an asshole, right? So I think we use just text. We humans use all kinds of forms of communication to kind of vent. I think it's the wrong thing to do, but people do that.
Text has a permanence, though. It's writing. I mean, it's writing.
You think like a lawyer. I
do think like a lawyer, but lawyers think like detail, you know? And why would you write that down? Like, you know, writing it down, like, would you write it down and would you put it on a billboard in Times Square? Because like everything you say on Facebook or Instagram can and will be used against you in a court of law. Like every photo you post. I mean, that's going on with what's his name? Jake Paul or whatever Paul and Dylan Dennis right now. That guy's girlfriend, every picture that's ever been put on the internet of her by her is being weaponized right now.
To reference an earlier part of our discussion, that's love. You take a big risk putting it out there.
Yeah.
Putting out there on text, putting out there on social media. You take
But
risks.
is the reward of doing it via text worthwhile? Listen, the reward of love, I think, is worth the risks of love. Mm-hmm. But the benefit of communicating by text, does it merit that risk of that being in writing that the person can reflect on and review and scroll back and get heated up again about?
I don't know. We just take risks and we're vulnerable with each other.
There may be something about text that, for whatever reasons, inspires a kind of candor. Because I think it is a new way to communicate, right?
Yeah.
In the scheme of things. And so sometimes, you know, we don't know the thing until it's really come into existence. So I don't know. I think it started as something that we just communicated in a very extemporaneous, unplanned way. Like texts were meant to be, I'm here, I'm outside, whatever it might be. And so what happens when you start to talk about more emotional, deeper, bigger things or visceral things or more emphatic, passionate things using a technology that was originally just being used for the other purpose? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is, yeah, as a lawyer, A, from an evidentiary perspective, and B, I just know what it looks like on the outside. Like I know when I read it what it looks like. And that's not always accurate. Like to just see it's like when you watch, you know, a video of someone at just their worst moment, you know, and the person tries to say, but wait, that's not me. Like that was just me in that moment. That was me at this incredible low point. And I think as a lawyer, my job is to weaponize that and to try to say, okay, this low point is indicative of who they actually are.
Yeah.
And when I'm defending someone, I'm supposed to say, you know, well, this is their low point, and we've all been to a low point, and this is just a moment in this person. And to judge them by that moment, would you want to be judged by your worst moment? So I have to be able to look at that both directions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone looks great on text.
I mean, there's so much of our communication that is missing. Your expression. Like my sense of humor does not do well via text. Like I because I have like sometimes a sarcastic sense of humor, or I have a dry sense of humor, and it does not always translate well to text. The nuance of things is lost sometimes, you know.
Yeah, but that's what makes the risk of it hilarious. I mean, the emojis, the memes, all that. Taking a risk. There's a risk with the text if you do some like dark, dry statement, right?
Mhm.
That's a joke, and then the pause, and then there's no response for a couple hours. I mean, that's beautiful. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
It's this, you know, it's the gap between the two trapezes, you know, like once you've hit send and you're like, well, let's see where this goes. Like this is coming back now, you know, and you're waiting and waiting. It's like that moment of just hang is, that's a rush. I mean, that's a rush. That's a beautiful thing.
Well, I have my friend Michael Malice living close by, and if the courtroom were ever to see the text between us, we would be both in jail for
So we know who to subpoena.
many years.
Pessoal, lembrando que se vocês gostaram do vídeo, deixa o like, comenta e se inscreve no nosso canal. Até a próxima!